This is Books of Titans, the podcast dedicated to the influences of influencers. The books that have helped shape prominent inventors, business leaders, athletes, intellectuals, scientists, and others. We'll talk about what makes these books such classics, and at least attempt to have an intelligent discussion about what makes them so important and influential.
Hello, this is Erik Rostad coming to you right outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Today I'm going to cover a book called Robot Proof: Higher Education in the Age of Artificial Intelligence by Dr. Joseph E. Aoun. This is book 39 from my 2018 reading list of 52 total books. This episode will consist of 3 segments. The first will be an introduction to the book, the author, and my initial reaction. The second will be 3 key ideas, and the third segment will be the one thing, my one key takeaway that I hope to begin implementing immediately as a result of this book. So on to segment 1, the author, Dr. Joseph E. Aoun. He is the 7th president of Northeastern University, which is up in Boston, and he has been in that role of the presidency since 2006. He was born in Beirut, Lebanon, and he has a PhD in linguistics from MIT. This book was released in 2017, so it's just a few years old, and it was released by MIT Press. It was suggested by myself. Northeastern's been one of my biggest clients. I'm a website developer, and have done a few sites for the university, and have worked with them since 2017. And so I saw this book highlighted when I would go visit campus for work, and thought it would be an interesting one to read. And since reading it, I've become much more interested in the topic. And I see a huge need to help companies prepare for the future for their workforces. So this book gets into that, as well as education for yourself and how universities can play a role in all that. I read it in December of last year, so December 5th through the 9th of 2018. And it's a relatively short book. It's about 150 pages. And so you can get through it pretty quickly, but it packs quite a punch. So as for my initial reaction, I think it's a short and important book. It describes the coming AI storm, the changes that are going to be happening as a result of artificial intelligence, and highlights what you can do about it personally, what universities and companies can do to prepare for what's coming. The structure of the book is it's broken up into 5 different chapters. The first is Fears of a Robotic Future. The second is Views from the C-Suite, what employers want in their own words. Third chapter is A Learning Model for the Future, so how education academia can respond. The fourth is The Experiential Difference, so experiential learning. Northeastern is big on co-ops and having their students work in companies or organizations that are relevant to their field. And then the 5th chapter is Learning for Life, so lifelong learning. As the president of Northeastern University, he has a unique view on the topic and a unique perspective, I think, that you might not get in other books about AI. And that's because he's able to affect change at the university level to prepare for what's coming. So he talks about that. He talks about what he is doing at Northeastern to make them robot proof. And so, there's a ton of books out there about artificial intelligence, but that's the neat thing about this one is the perspective of a university president writing it. As for who should read the book, I would say educators, first of all. It'd be a great book for you to read. Secondly, CEOs who realize that the workforce is about to go a major change. And then thirdly, anyone who needs a kick to begin their own lifelong learning. I know for me, I read The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman. I read that in 2003 or 2004. And as a result of that, I decided to go to grad school, and he kind of painted a picture of what was coming in terms of changes in the workforce, and it's only become more so since then. So if you kind of need that kick to get you going on a path of lifelong learning, this would be a good book and a good, short, pithy book to do that. this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome, and thanks for checking it out. I started the Books of Titans project because I needed help picking out the best books. I found out what some of the world's top performers were reading and started reading those books to the tune of 52 per year or one a week. I set my reading list a year in advance and then I share it online. That helps create accountability and a connection with others who are reading the same books. I want you to experience the benefits of having a yearly reading list. To that end, the Books of Titans website is stocked full of resources to help you find the best books. And I've also opened up the website to where you can begin sharing your reading list. This will allow you to share it with others, write reviews, and rate each book. I have 3 different plans, with the first one starting at just $9 per month. Your books will be placed in a visually stunning format that you can share on social platforms. Go to booksoftitans.com/mybooks for more details. One thing I also do each week, or I've started doing each week, is highlighting someone else who is reading a lot, or a tool that can help you read better. And this week I'm going to highlight someone named Alexander the Great Reader. And you can find him on Instagram at the username The Great Reader. And that's DA and then Great Reader. And I will link to his page in the show notes. But he started doing an experiment on himself that he started in 2017 with a goal to read 100 books a year. I mean, I'm trying to read 52, and this guy he's trying to do 100 books a year. And here are the results so far. In 2017, he read 105 books. 2018, he read 216 books. And already in 2019 here, he has read 46 books. He said he's going to do this experiment for 10 years, and just 5 years ago, he had never read a book in his life, and now look at what he's doing. It's really inspiring. I love following him on Instagram, and he also has a podcast. So if you go to his Instagram page, the link in his bio is a link to his podcast. And what's cool about his podcast is he'll talk about a book for just 5 to 10 minutes, and you'll get like three of the main points from that book. He also gets all the books from the library. So if you're thinking about doing a reading project and you're worried about cost, it doesn't have to cost anything. You can get all these books from the library. So very inspiring man, very inspiring project that he's doing. So I encourage you to check him out. Again, his Instagram page will be linked in the show notes of this article. So back to the book. This section, I'm going to highlight 3 different ideas from the book and then expand on each one. So the first one is going to be the future of education. The second one, what types of jobs will be replaced with artificial intelligence. And then the third idea is lifelong learning. So the future of education. I'm going to start off with a question here. Do you know what the word alma mater means? It actually means a nourishing mother. And Dr. Aoun, in this book, he is calling universities to come back to that idea, to engage in lifelong teaching. So he's encouraging individuals to pursue lifelong learning, but he is calling universities to engage in lifelong teaching, to be that nourishing mother throughout life. And it's really cool, the idea he has for that. It's not just going to college for 4 years and then they send you letters and try to get money from you for the rest of your life. But instead, it's an idea of the university always being there. So 10 years into your career, you realize that you need a new set of skills. You need to up your game. You can go back to the university and maybe not get a degree, but do different things to increase your skills. And so his idea is for that university system to be there throughout your life. So here's one quote he says about that. Universities must broaden their reach to become engines for lifelong learning. And he says that in the introduction to the book. The way he calls universities to do that is in 4 main areas. The first is for them to have a robust system of experiential learning for students. So at Northeastern University, this takes the form of co-ops, where students can work for companies or organizations that fit with or are ancillary to their program of study. The second thing is to create a more modular system of study, and this was really cool. I liked this idea. So what he's getting at with this modular system of study is that Existing students or lifelong learners can take a stack of courses or knowledge paths to learn specific skill sets that don't fit within a traditional degree path. So we often think of undergraduate degrees or graduate degrees, but what he's talking about, let's maybe keep that, but also perhaps add a new system of study that's a modular one. So if you need to learn biochemistry, you could do a modular system based on that isn't necessarily in a degree path. So with this, it'll obviously be up to the university system to figure out a way to get these with correct credentials that employers will be able to understand and that sort of thing. But just a neat concept and a neat thing for universities to begin thinking about. Another thing that he suggests that universities can do as part of this this lifelong teaching plan is to set up multi-university networks where different locations focus on unique cultural and or technological areas. So for instance, the way Northeastern is doing this is they're setting up campuses in different parts of the world. And so those different campuses will have a unique cultural perspective, and then they can also focus on a unique technological area. This, in essence, would also allow a student to study at multiple locations within the same university and not just within their degree program, but throughout their life. So I know Northeastern has one in Toronto. Obviously, their main campus is in Boston. They have another campus in Charlotte. And so Dr. Aoun is actually building this out right now with Northeastern to have a multi-university network. So kind of a neat, again, a neat idea. And then the last thing he talks about a lot in this book is a business and academia connection. And I want to read this section because I thought it was pretty interesting the way that he described it. So this is starting on page 121. In the past, universities determined curricular design largely by themselves, assuming that they understood learners' needs and the desired outcomes. In the lifelong learning model of the future, universities will co-design curricula in full partnership with employers and learners. From a conceptual point of view, this means that they will have to sit down with learners to map out their professional needs and outcomes candidly. Just as important, they will respond to changes in the workplace by inviting employers to discuss their business demands. This means that the conceptualization of new academic programs, universities will account for the business strategies employers are seeking to accomplish, their professional workforce requirements, and the ways technology is changing the shape of their industries. In other words, the employer will become an equal partner in delineating the contours of educational content, helping to keep it streamlined and relevant to the moment. So I thought that was cool, just a deeper connection with employers. And I've seen Northeastern do this. One of the sites that I've worked on is their entrepreneurship website, and they have a lot of different connections, startup incubators, that sort of thing with industry and companies especially in the Boston area that they connect to academia. So again, 4 different really cool ways: the experiential learning for students, the modular system of study, multi-university networks, and then the business to academia connection. The main goal is to educate people to think in ways that cannot be imitated by networks of machines. And he goes into a lot of that on the types of jobs, and I'll get into that in the next section. He talks about an idea called Humanics, which he says, we need a new model of learning that enables learners to understand the highly technological world around them that simultaneously allows them to transcend it by nurturing the mental and intellectual qualities that are unique to humans, namely their capacity for creativity and mental flexibility. So again, we're entering a highly technological world. There's going to be robots. There's going to be artificial intelligence. There's going to be more and more powerful computers. The people that will thrive in that situation, in that environment, are those who can work with computers, who can work with the robots, and who have the mental and intellectual capabilities and strive to constantly improve those, the things that are unique to humans. And what he really highlights there is their creativity and mental flexibility. So let's talk about what jobs are going to be replaced. I always think first we think of manual labor, where it's obvious we can see that being replaced by machines. So that's the first thing to go. But then in the intro of this book, he says computers are moving from the ability to learn from explicit programming to being able to learn from data. So in the past, whatever the programmer would program into the computer would do that and do that faithfully and do it correctly with few errors. But now computers are able to learn from data. So we talk about this age of we're in the big data. Companies are collecting a ton of information on their customers. Social media platforms are collecting a lot of data on their users. And now we have all this data, and people and companies, they're using this to kind of get data out of that. But computers are able to now learn from all this data that they're collecting. So with that in mind, will my job be okay? And here's what he says. As computers and advanced machines take the next leap forward and attain high levels of cognition, they are poised to replace professionals who make decisions based on information. In other words, they are poised to replace thinkers. Well, that's kind of scary, isn't it? I mean, you think, okay, manual labor, I can see how a machine could do the manual labor. That makes sense. But thinkers, how can a computer think? Like, how can it take my place if I'm doing work that requires deep thinking? Well, I want to bring in a few books here that we've read for the Books of Titans project. The first one is Thinking Fast and Slow. This one comes up in almost every episode. It is a foundational book. But Kahneman talks about our decision mechanism as being flawed. And then if we look at Homo Deus by Harari, he says that decisions are made better by algorithms, a lot of decisions. And we're starting to see more and more of that. I mean, just take your GPS on your phone. I trust that more than I trust even what they're saying on the radio of what you should do for traffic, because, and that's just one area where the decisions being made by that real-time traffic GPS system are better than, just obviously just looking at a static map or even the traffic on the radio. So he says employment will less often involve the routine application of facts, so education should follow suit. So those are the types of jobs that are going to be going away. And I think we're going to be shocked in the near future. I mean, we're talking accountants, we're talking intro lawyers, people who are just starting out in law. A lot of that is going to be done by computers, by artificial intelligence. Jobs that we traditionally have thought of as being safe and white collar per se are going to be replaced by computers. So the question now then is, what can't computers yet do? And here are a few things Dr. Aoun says that they can't do as of yet. No computer has yet displayed creativity, entrepreneurialism, or cultural agility. Technology lacks the discernment to filter truth from deceit, and we can see that in fake news and the trouble that a lot of the social platforms are having in distinguishing between what is a real news story and what is a fake news story. The algorithms have a hard time determining or distinguishing between those. And the final thing he says is machines cannot know the world through human experience. They cannot fully account or fully appreciate human context. One other important thing to think about when we're thinking about, even your own job, will that job be replaced? New jobs will be gained. So as we're talking about jobs being lost, it's important to remember that new jobs will be gained as a result. and there will be new opportunities that arise out of this. But the people that will be able to take advantage of those new opportunities will be the lifelong learners, which leads to the final key idea from this book, which is lifelong learning. And here's the book's money quote. The key to becoming the most robot-proof person of all is to be the self-directed lifelong learner. But it's not just about learning, it's also about application. And this is where Dr. Aoun gets into the experiential learning. And what he means by that is putting into practice what you're learning. So the students at Northeastern, they learn in the classroom, and then they have these co-ops and different opportunities where they can apply what they've learned. And he says what that does is it steeps them in randomness. So whereas everything is kind of cut and dry in your textbook, once you go and apply that and do the experiential learning, there's random events, and that's really where the learning comes in. Learning happens when we act and think. So he goes into the deliberate learning. These capacities, cognitive, are mindsets rather than bodies of knowledge. They're mental architecture rather than mental furniture. So that's really the goal of lifelong learning, is to create a mental architecture for moving forward, for constantly learning new skills, rather than just having different pieces of mental furniture that you've collected. So again, 3 key points from this book: the future of education, what jobs will be replaced, and how you can prepare for the future through lifelong learning. Now on to segment 3 and the one thing. So real quick, the reason I do the one thing is people ask a lot, like, what are some of the best ways to retain what you read? And I think the best thing to do is to immediately apply something from the book. Any book is going to have a lot of key takeaways or things that you can apply, but I try to pick one that I want to apply, or one thing that I want to change in my life as a result of what I read in the book. And I try to do that with every book. Obviously, it's hard for novels, where novel's more of a story, but I still try to get a key takeaway out of that. But in a book like this, it's pretty. There's a pretty clear key takeaway for me, and here's my one thing for this book: start becoming robot-proof today. And I mean me, like right now. What can I do to become robot-proof today? So I do website development, and that is an information-based job. There's thinking involved, but according to this book, my time is limited. I would guess that maybe 5 years from now, website development as we know it right now is going to be gone. Not gone as in there's not going to be any more websites, but there will be tools. There will be artificial intelligence. There will be more powerful computers that can create a website for somebody where they don't need me to do it anymore. And I think one test you can do for yourself is, can you type out what you do for your job? Can you type that out in a email and send it to somebody who will work for $5 an hour, and they can do your job exactly how you do it? If you can do that, if you can type out everything you do, and somebody else can do it for a lot cheaper, a computer can also do that. It makes me think of that scene in Good Will Hunting, the famous bar scene where Will Hunting starts talking to the guy, and the guy's just kind of spouting off knowledge. And Will Hunting said, you read that in a book and you blew $150,000 on an education you could have just gotten for $1.50 in late charges reading these same books at the library. You didn't learn. You actually didn't learn this stuff. You're just regurgitating. Whereas Will Hunting, he says, at least I won't be unoriginal because I have thought about what I've read. I haven't just read it. And that's really the key going forward of in what this book is about and what Dr. Aoun is trying to do with universities. He's trying to get them past just the knowledge, the transfer of knowledge, but to apply that knowledge through experiential learning, through lifelong learning. So at the end of the day, we don't know how things are going to pan out. In any book that says that they're predicting what's going to happen in the next 5 years, you can pretty much ignore that. But we do know that things are going to change, and the people that are going to do well, who are going to thrive, are going to be the people who are the lifelong learners. One thing he talks about, I want to read this quote and then ask you what type of person you're going to be going into the future. Here's the quote. "I believe that when people are given education, they may still be astonished by the changes and mysteries that the future holds, but they will see these as opportunities rather than threats." If you read any newspaper, it's all about the threats of AI. It's all about the threats to the workforce. 50% of the workforce may disappear. Threats, it's negative. So do you see that as a threat, or do you see it as an opportunity? It's really how you respond right now, today, in how you're becoming robot-proof through lifelong learning. So to recap the book, if you went to school, if you went to college, you were likely trained to kind of just be a cog in the machine, to do the work, to get it done. But this is a book that is a call to action for universities to expand their role, to not just educate people for 4 years and then set them off into the workforce, but to be partners with them on a lifelong journey of learning. But it's also about the individual. It's about taking action for yourself and participating in your own lifelong learning. And it's never too late. One of the guys I follow on Twitter is George Raveling. He is 81 years old, and he is a nonstop reader. He is constantly learning, and he's a real inspiration. And I hope I'm that way at 80 years old. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Before I sign off, just a reminder that you can now share your reading list on the Books of Titans website by going to booksoftitans.com/mybooks. You can also follow Books of Titans on Instagram or Twitter @Books of Titans. And if you haven't already done so, you can subscribe to this podcast and find all of our past episodes through iTunes, the Android Marketplace, or your podcast manager of choice. If you're enjoying the podcast, please make sure to give it a 5-star rating on iTunes and share your favorite episodes on social media and with your friends. We'll be back next week with another book, either Jason or I. And until then, keep reading, keep learning, and keep listening. I'm out.